Thank you for joining me today. I'm Sheri from Sunflowers and Petals, and in this video, we're going to be discussing basic first aid for cyclists. If you like this video and want to know more when I release more videos, just hit the subscribe button below and you'll be alerted. Joining us today is Kyle Seegers. Welcome, Kyle. Why don't you tell viewers a little bit about yourself?
Oh, like Sheri said, my name's Kyle. I'm a full-time firefighter paramedic with the Elk Grove Village Fire Department, where I've been for my 13th year, starting now, 3 of which I've been a lieutenant now. I'm a member of the hazmat team, technical rescue team, swiftwater rescue team, and on the side, also, I work here at Lucky Break Bike Shop in Crystal Lake, and I started my own bicycle fitting company called Sweet Spot Bike Fitting. So I get to see the good and the bad of riding bikes and what can and can't happen. And I've learned a lot over the years with bicycle accidents that I've used now in my day-to-day life. And when I'm out riding, hopefully more than 6,000 miles this year, that's my goal. So
yeah, I got 6,000 last year, so
I know I'm chasing you.
Let's hope the same for this year.
All right.
Yeah. So, in all my years of cycling, I've witnessed more accidents than I care to say. And they happen for a variety of reasons. You got the overlapping wheels, you got road debris, you've got taking a corner too quickly. For me, the number one advice is that if there's an accident, just stay calm. But there's so much more you can do and should do in a crash situation. From your experience, how do most bike injuries occur? And I'm sure there's differences and similarities between road and mountain bike injuries.
Yeah, so you bring up some really good points with the differences. If we focus on one discipline specifically for the mountain biker, is this, a mountain biker that's, going through the local trail system where they lose an edge over the berm and go into the tree line. We're talking more, different things that they can run into and impact as they fall off the bike. Versus going out on the road where, if it's a group ride and a person goes down, you could have multiple people go down just from that one person in a pace line going down. And then obviously the white elephant in the room with riding on the road is cars and vehicles. There's a big difference in falling off your bike doing single track mountain bike riding versus having a car run into you. So when we talk about in the fire service and in the EMS field, mechanism of injury, it's really important for us, to look at what happened to cause the injury. One of the first things we always ask is, is this rider, did they feel faint or lightheaded before they even went down? Because maybe there's a medical condition that led to this versus, a slip or a cross of a wheel. But, we want to know exactly what they hit, how fast they were going, things like that, because that all adds into our scenario that we try to paint for the hospital if we are transporting or making a decision whether or not they even need to go to the hospital, depending on severity. So mechanism of injury is huge. We try to put the story in our brains to try to look for hidden injuries, things like that. But yeah, definitely a big difference between road and mountain bike, but still, bad injuries can happen, and it's good to be prepared.
Yeah, I started mountain biking last March, and those trees don't move very easily.
No, they don't.
So let's say you're riding and your companion's involved in an accident. What should you do next?
Yeah, so kind of going back to the mechanism of injury, how it happened. What we do always as firefighters when we arrive on scene is our first thoughts are scene safety and body substance isolation. So if it's you riding and one of your friends goes down, is this in our local trail system is Raceway Woods? Is this in a place in Raceway Woods where it's in a berm where we have to worry about more riders coming down and potentially running into the guy or girl that's already down on the ground? Or did this happen out on the road where we're concerned about vehicles? If this person went down in the middle of the road and there's no other cars around to flag for help or put up a barrier between the person down and oncoming traffic, maybe it's a good idea to just kind of assist them away from the road so that, don't get hit by a car coming the other way, especially low lighting situations. This is all just stuff, you want to have in the back of your head as it's hard not to get focused exactly on what's happening with your friend that's down and being compassionate and wanting to take care of them. But, having taken a step back, thinking big picture, let's make sure that no further injuries occur to them and you. So yeah. And then from there, like I already talked about, how did it occur, what you're kind of seeing with the person, you know, we'll get in a head to toe assessment. Did they lose consciousness at all? And then call to help, you know, at what point do you call for help? And I think that's really case by case. And you know, your friend that you're riding with, if they're not acting right, or if it's a really bad injury, make that call for help right away versus, you know, kind of looking them over, seeing what the best options are to then deciding whether or not to call 911. And the other thing too, when you call 911, a lot of people don't do it very often. It's not something that people call 911 for every day, like their DoorDash and food, which everyone does now. So be prepared to give a lot of response to that 911 dispatcher, where you're at, what happened, extent of injuries, because their job then is to call us and let us know everything coming in. You know, is this something that, you know, we need to, if you're out in the woods, potentially bring like an ATV with to get to you. Or, you know, if it's a really bad sounding accident, you know, we like to get our Flight for Life or Life Net now helicopters ready to come so that the right transport can be made to the right facility. So this is all stuff that, you know, might be asked by the dispatcher. They're not trying to take away from you taking care of your friend or being with them. It's just all important information that we need to know coming in as first responders.
Okay. And you mentioned head to toe assessment. What should someone be looking for?
Yeah. So when I teach first aid, the way I like to tell it is just anything out of the ordinary. We have an acronym that we use in the field called DCAP BTLS, which is deformities, contusions, abrasions, punctures, burns, tenderness, laceration, swelling. I don't expect every cyclist who's out on the road to remember that acronym, but look for something that doesn't look right. Is it a bruise, a cut, you know, major bleed versus minor bleeding, you know, all stuff like that. You just looking. If you are comfortable with doing it, you can definitely palpate, you know, if it's an arm, try to figure out if there's, you know, pain in the mid arm versus lower arm, wrist. But basically always we start at the head and then work down all the way to the toes and then eventually the back. So if you want, I can go into a little bit more on that though.
Sure. And then I think also a lot of times you don't want to move the person because of spinal or neck injury. So, and
Right.
I've had people land face down and you need to turn them over. What's the best way to evaluate and move them?
So as far as people being prone or on their stomachs, the best thing to do, honestly, is if they're still breathing and they're what you would call normal breathing, they can stay like that for right now. Versus them, if it's like a gasping breath, or if they're not breathing very well at all, at that point, then hopefully you have other people to help you. But you want to maintain that central neck stabilization where the body turns as the neck as the center of focus, so there's no twisting side to side, anything like that. If you have a couple riders, one person can grab a hold of the head to maintain that we call it cervical spine immobilization, and the other person can roll them onto their side together in a coordinated effort, if that makes sense. The head's really important though. The head is the most important part of the human body. That brain controls all the functions of the body. So when you're looking at the head, and hopefully we're out riding with people that are wearing helmets, that's always the question we get a lot is, well, should we take the helmet off? Should we keep it on? You know, what do we do with that? And our recommendation is always try to keep the helmet on as long as it's not disrupting any airway or their breathing. You know, if it's, you don't see it too much with cycling helmets unless they're wearing a full face helmet. But like with football, you know, players, you know, getting rid of that screen. Or I guess if it would be like a downhill mountain bike helmet, you know, if they're not breathing, you may have to try to slide that helmet off the best you can to maintain an airway. But and then the other thing too with helmets, honestly, make sure that that helmet gets brought to the hospital with the rider if they do go down. It's important for the doctors and the staff to see that impact area, to see not only where they were hit, but also like what kind of damage was done to the helmet. If it's significant cracking and damage, that's going to lead them down the road of looking deeper into, like, you know, maybe injuries that might be, you know, lingering days after that they would normally have to do a scan for. That if they're like, oh, well, they're acting normal, you know, we can just discharge them. If they see that helmet and how much it was wrecked, that's going to give them the suspicion to look further for deeper injuries.
Yeah,
So, and then,
that's a big one with that sending the helmet. A lot of people don't think about doing that.
yeah. One thing that we occasionally do with car accident scenes is we'll take a picture with a phone that's on the vehicle to bring to the hospital to show to the doctor, because it's one thing when, you know, the telephone game, you tell me, I tell you, and it gets completely messed up after there. If you have a picture for those doctors and nurses to see, they can, you know, then take that significance and really make sure the full treatment path is seen all the way through.
That's
And
a
then
great
there's,
tip. I haven't heard of that one.
yeah, concussions too. I do a lot of EMT work with the Norgie Ski Club where my sons jump, and my daughter now. Concussions. The best thing that I like to do when someone's involved in like a skiing accident, checking for concussions, is just asking them, what were you doing last? What do you remember last doing? What were you doing that led you to the ground? And if they can't remember that, you know, I was biking, or if it's, you know, a lapse and delay at all, that's a good index or a good reason for suspicion that they might have a concussion too. So it's all just knowing the people you ride with, and if they do hit their head, making sure that they're acting normal. If they're not acting normal, chances are they may have a concussion and they need to go get examined.
Great information. So let's talk about what you should carry on the bike. I have to admit, I don't carry any emergency kit or first aid items. I do bike with a retired nurse who seems to have, you know, the whole emergency room in her saddlebag, even though it's a small saddlebag. What would you recommend we carry?
Well, I think when you're looking at your emergency kit, you got to think what could be expected. If we're talking just basic first aid wound care, you know, I like to carry in my pack a couple bandages, some 4x4 dressings that you can get at Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, you know, wherever, just simple gauze bandages, and then an ACE wrap, just something that can keep that bandage on. And if you need to create more pressure on the wound. Because remember, from high school first aid, there's direct pressure on the wound. Then there's, if it's still bleeding, elevated above their head. And then there's pressure points going up the arm or the leg, finding those arteries to slow bleeding down, putting additional bandages on. And then a lot of people don't even realize that we're all riding around with tourniquets in our bike kits. You know, those spare tubes that we all have for when you puncture. Those can, if it's a very bad injury, like we're talking a massive arterial bleed where blood's squirting everywhere, and they just, your friend doesn't look good, they look pale, they're becoming very confused and disoriented because of the blood loss, you got an inner tube that you can take out, wrap as tight as you can around that extremity or where that blood is coming from, and can, you know, contain that bleeding. Though I will say the important part is if you are going to do something with that, make sure you look at the time that you could see that it was applied on, because that's something that the hospital is going to want to know. And that is like a last case stitch effort, because once you put a tourniquet on and you cut blood flow all the way off to that extremity, you know that there's a significance in it. So it's something that you shouldn't be concerned about, but just have in the back of your head, you know, this is a life-saving effort, and there is a lot of significance to it.
Good tip.
Yeah. So my kit: Band-Aids, gauze, a wrap, and a bike tube.
Great idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
So hopefully someone's out directing traffic and watching for the paramedics, so you can quickly bring to your injured cyclist. What should you be prepared to tell the EMTs when they arrive?
Right. So the first thing that I always like to do, like we kind of talked about already, is say what led into this. Was this a person who this is their big first above 50-mile ride, and they're just really tired, really worn down at the end of the ride, and they just kind of lost it? Is this something that, you know, you're riding with these people day to day, and you know their fitness level, and just like that, something changed? You know, this is all important information that we need to know. How fast were they going? You know, is this a 20-mile-an-hour pace line out in the middle, you know, of Union, Illinois, where there's no cars around and, you know, wheels overlap? Or is it, you know, doing your single track at Raceway or Silver Lake or wherever you're riding, you know, just to kind of put in our perspective how fast they were going, you know, how fast that impact occurred. Was it an up and over type of accident, or was it a slide out? Was there a vehicle involved? All stuff like that is really important because that's going to lead us down a path of thinking one way or another as far as treatment and transport goes. If you know your friend really, really well, if you know their past medical history, that's huge, especially if they're on blood thinners, let's say, and they're involved in even a small accident where their head was hit. If they're on blood thinners, that's really going to raise our suspicion of a brain bleed or, severe injury because of them being on that medication. If you know how they are, if they're allergic to anything, I know a lot of riders ride with like a medical card with them, or they have the bracelets out now that you can get, stuff like that to always help. Having, your ICE, your important contact in your phone is always huge too, for calling the people that need to be notified. And that helps with us too, for letting loved ones know that their family member's been transported. If you've been doing your head to toe assessment or just looking over your friend, you can pass along information that you see, like, they were complaining about their chest being sore before they started being confused now, or their neck is really hurting and they're not acting. All stuff like that you've noticed, we're going to definitely take into consideration when we do our, beginning of treatment and where we're going to go with that. Going back to the helmet issue, if they have a really badly damaged helmet or even a little badly damaged helmet, make sure the paramedics bring that with to the hospital. Not a lot of them see bicycle accidents every day. And it's something that, can be reminded to them, kindly, like, hey, I think you should bring their helmet with so that the doctor can see it at the emergency room. And they'll always bring it with anyway, because it's personal belongings. I'll tell a story really fast. We had a bicyclist in Bussy Woods that went down a few years back, and he had a brand new, I want to say it was like a Felt or Cervelo road bike that he was riding, a very, very high-end bike. And we actually, even though his frame was split down the middle at the top tube and the bottom bracket from the impact, like, we put it in he didn't want to go to the hospital unless that bike was coming with him. So we are very used to bringing people's stuff with to the hospital. So bringing a helmet shouldn't be a big deal. And that guy ended up doing okay. Also,
did you stop his Garmin? That's a big thing. Did you stop it?
Yeah, I asked him where he was on the Strava segment. I'm like, are you close to the leaderboard? We'll keep rolling for you, But the other thing too is paramedics work as a team. We like to think of ourselves as almost like a NASCAR pit crew approach to doing things. Everyone has a task. It moves very fast. A lot of times there isn't even a lot of communication. It just happens like that. So the paramedics may ask you for help, or they may say, hey, we're just going to need you to stand over here. We got all the information we needed. Thank you so much. And don't be offended by that. It's just, they have a routine that they follow, and they work together day in and day out for 24 hours at a time, and they know how each other functions. So they might ask you to help if you're holding their head, like we were talking about, keeping that neck stable. If you're doing a great job doing that, if I'm the paramedic, I'm going to say, hey, if you're okay down there, you're doing great. Please keep doing that, because it's another free set of hands for us. And then also too, trying to figure out which hospital we want to go to. Your story and leading into this accident is going to give us a good indication of, is this someone that needs to go to a level 1 trauma center versus the hospital down the street, where there's 24-hour emergency surgeons on staff and not at the close hospital. So all that stuff kind of comes into play too. And that's important when we talk to the riders around the person that went down to see what happened. So
can you touch upon, I ride with a couple of people with diabetes, what to look for, especially on those long endurance rides. Also, on the flip side, I think cyclists who are diabetic should let their circle of friends know that they do have diabetes, so that you do watch out for certain like confusion or low blood sugar, that kind of thing, what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you hit a great point there, just knowing the people you're riding with. I don't think there's any harm in asking, those people that you're riding with on a day-to-day basis, like, hey, if you were to get in an accident or something were to happen, is there any medical conditions you should know about? I ride with people very regularly that have diabetes, and you can kind of tell, I can tell with the guys I ride with, when they're pulling hard and we're riding fast together, if they're starting to fall off the back a little bit more and more, drop back and say, hey, you need some sugar, what's going on? The first thing to look for with diabetes is confusion. For some people, it can happen very fast as soon as they get out of that range where they're comfortable in. For others, like my father-in-law, for example, he can run fully alert and oriented with a sugar level in the 20s, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So everyone's different. It's important to know who you're riding with. Like you said, the confusion is the first big indicator with diabetes. And then also, what do we do now that they're confused? We all have those electrolyte gels now. Hopefully they came out prepared with some sort of like sugar that they can ingest quickly, whether it be a can of Coke, a goo or a waffle, and don't be afraid too to, give them some of your stuff. Sugar is sugar when it comes to diabetics. It's not going to hurt them. If they are low, it's only going to raise them up to where they need to be. It's important though, once you do get them back to where they're thinking normal and maybe or they look normal, remember that all that sugar that you gave them is very fast dissolving. It's not like eating a big, peanut butter sandwich where there's slower dissolving carbohydrates. You're giving them quick sugar because on the bike, we want that quick sugar to go to our muscles right away so that we can keep riding. Well, with the diabetics, they're going to take that quick sugar and it's only going to last for a short amount of time. So if you are 20 miles from home and, you've got this diabetic that you ride with who starting to feel woozy, got them back to normal, maybe you call for the car at that point because they're going to only expend more energy getting back home to the store of energy you gave them in that sugar. And it's probably going to be safer avoiding a potential accident, just having them ride back in a car or vehicle of some sorts.
Okay, thanks. That's good information.
Yeah.
So I always wear a road ID when I ride or if I'm hiking or any activity. But can you suggest any technologies or aids that you can use to help in an event of an accident?
Yeah, so I'll tell you everything that I use and things that I've seen that work really well. The first thing that I have is my Garmin. Everyone has either a Garmin or a Wahoo, and if you don't, there's the apps you can use on your phone. I know with Garmin they have the accident alert. If your Garmin head unit senses that you were involved in an accident, if you have your phone linked to your Garmin, it'll automatically call your emergency contact within 30 seconds of that accident. Other technology, actually have my mountain bike helmet here with me. This is my Specialized mountain bike helmet. And on the back, you can see there's this little tab. This is Angie. And Angie is very similar where it links into your smartphone through the app with Specialized when you're riding. And if you were to fall off your bike or hit a tree and it senses that head movement fast or quickly and not normal, that will also alert you that you either, hey, were you involved in an accident? If you don't respond, it'll notify your emergency contact for that. And Garmin also has like the live tracking. When I ride my bike to the firehouse in the morning, it's from Cary, it's like a 25-mile ride. With the low light, I like to let my wife know where I'm at. Garmin has their live tracking, which is free. So your loved ones can always see exactly where you're at as you're riding through your Garmin linked to your phone. I always say ride with a buddy if you can too. It's really nice to get out on long solo rides, but if you have someone that you are riding with, that's just another person that you can keep track of them, they can keep track of you, and you can maintain a line of communication that you're doing okay. Another thing it's pretty basic, pretty old school, but just leaving a note in your vehicle. If you drive your vehicle to like a Silver Lake or a Raceway Woods, leave a note in your car and say, hey, Kyle Seegers out riding, started riding at 10:45. That way, if something were to happen, the vehicle comes in or they know, hey, that's Kyle's car. They go and look in the window. Oh man, he's been here for half an hour. Kind of gives them how long I've potentially been down for, where I might be riding at, and it's basic stuff. All it takes is a piece of paper and a pen. So, but yeah, there's a lot of great technology out there. A lot of it you can get through your local bike shops or online. And, it's always changing, always improving. Technology is a blessing and a curse sometimes, but
absolutely,
with this instance, it's definitely a good thing.
Great. So this has been a lot of great information. My head is swimming, Any
Mine too.
thoughts to share before we wrap up?
I think the big one is when people aren't involved in dealing with accidents on a regular basis. So when they do occur, it goes from time flying by, you're having a great time on your bike, to all of a sudden time is at a standstill. We hear all the time, coming, from the fire station when we respond to incidents, like, oh, it seemed like it took you guys a half an hour, and literally it was 2.5 minutes.
Wow.
Or a lot of people can say, like, oh, my friend's been having a seizure for 2.5 minutes now, and we've had, camera footage of a building, inside the warehouse where they might have went down, where they had a 15-second seizure. Like, that's how fast the brain slows down and how fast, the emotions will take over. So things happen fast, and then after that, it slows way down. It's going to seem like forever if you do call for help. Just know that if you made that call, help is on the way. Stay calm. Think just basic stuff. How do we make sure another accident doesn't happen? Is there anything I can do to help the person that's down with my basic first aid, with the stuff that I bring along? And then the big important thing too is just communicating to those dispatchers or whoever you may be calling where exactly you're at. And they have ways to track too. They can ping your cell phone to figure out where exactly you guys are located, but know that help is on the way, and then just to stay calm. Just like you said in the beginning, there's that feeling of being alone. Most dispatchers will never hang up the phone with you once you call 911 until help arrives. So there'll always be someone talking you through everything and helping you, with anything that they need to know. Riding when tired, especially like when you're doing a big group ride, if you're feeling pretty worn down or tired, ride towards the back of the group. You might get a couple jabs for not taking your poles up front, but it's better than getting in an accident by crossing a wheel that can lead to other people behind you then all collapsing in. We see it all the time on the Grand Tours and the Peloton and professional racing. Once one person go down, you're bound to have someone else go down in those big group of riders. So then my last final points: have a plan. If you know where you're riding, make sure that you have a plan, or if something were to happen, what am I going to do? Because that's just one less step to think about when it does happen. And then always wear your protective gear. I know, you see people out there riding without helmets, and all it takes is a little tip over accident and hitting your head the wrong way that can lead to serious injuries. So dress for the occasion, dress for the job that you want, not the one you have, right? So if you think you're going to go fast today, maybe put a couple extra pads on, maybe throw some knee pads on, or making sure your wrists are protected. Helmets are great, but there's lots of other protective equipment you can get out there as well that can really help prevent injuries. Outside of that, it's been great today. Thanks for reaching out to me.
Well, thanks so much for being here today. If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
So I work here, like I said, here at Lucky Break Bike Shop. You can check Lucky Break out on Facebook, and then my bike fitting company, Sweet Spot Bike Fitting, is also on Facebook. Or you can get a link through the store to email me, reach out, however you want to do that. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks for watching another Sunflowers and Petals video. If you enjoyed this video, please click like button below and make sure to subscribe. Have a great day.